Hello, this week we've got a treat for you. It's Thriving Jane from Instagram, or Jane Thurnell-Read to give her real name. She's a really super inspiring person, but unfortunately this week not so inspiring was Zoom conferencing software, so we didn't get the video down, we couldn't salvage it, but we have, fortunately, thanks to the tech guy, that's me, a backup of the audio recorded. So this week's going to be a podcast.
Yeah, so absolutely, as we said, bit of a fail on the video front. However, we hope you sit back and listen to our podcast. Jane's amazing. She's in her 70s, she's going to the gym, she's cycling across countries, she's running London Marathon, she's done all sorts of fantastic things, and we hope you find her really inspiring. So like I said, sit back, close your eyes, listen to the podcast and enjoy. And please like, subscribe and share. Thank you. So your Instagram is Thriving Jane, and you post up lots of things that you do fitness-wise. We see you at the gym doing your weights and your exercises. We see some of the meals that you make. We see some inspirational quotes that you put up. And that's how we got involved with you. But you've been in the health and wellness industry for many, many years. So I was wondering, how did you first get into that business? When did you first become interested in sort of health and natural healing, well-being, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'd always been unwell, not massively unwell, but I had eczema, I had hives, hay fever, all sorts of different health problems. And I remember I was working in an office and somebody said to me, "Oh, what's wrong with you this week?" And I realised that I was actually seen as the office hypochondriac, but I knew that I wasn't a hypochondriac, that I had real problems. And when my eldest son was born, he developed eczema. And I was like, oh no, he's going to be exactly the same as me, always unwell, always never quite right, always having something wrong with him. So I decided I wanted to find for him the solution to to his problem. And to cut a very long story short, I started doing quite a bit of reading and realised that he was probably allergic to something. Now he's now 40. At that time, nowadays people are very familiar with that idea, but at that time it was a really considered a really strange idea. But I became convinced of that through reading. So the question was finding out what he was allergic to. And I went to a big event called Mind, Body, Spirit that used to be held in Olympia every year. And there was somebody there. There was a stand where they were doing Touch for Health kinesiology. And I talked to them and they said you can use muscle testing kinesiology to find out what people are allergic to. So I took my son to a kinesiologist in London, and he said he was allergic to wheat. So again, a strange idea at that time. Now that's, I think everybody's always meeting people who say I'm allergic to wheat, but then it was considered very odd. Anyway, I took him home, took him off wheat. His eczema disappeared. He just got happier. Everything improved for him. I took myself to the same person. I got better. So it was like, oh, this is just such an important thing to do. This is what I want to do. So that's how I got involved in it. That was back in 1982. I guess before you guys were born.
Born in 1982, actually. Yeah.
Oh right,
yeah.
You're looking good.
Thank you.
You're looking good.
Yeah, Johnny was 4
then, so you know.
So.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah,
you're both looking good.
Thank you.
It's amazing, isn't it, when you that similar experience happened for me about 6-7 years ago, when you see there's another way, and you try it, and it's almost instant, or if not instant, it feels good.
Yeah.
And you start lifting this lid, which is actually a whole new door to a totally new way of doing things.
Do you find, with regards to that, I mean, when you like we found you open this lid on health as such, and you start questioning everything, everything the doctor's ever told you, everything anyone's ever told you, anything you've read. Do you find when you speak to people about this, whether it be friends, family, or whether it's people who've come to you for help, do you find it's often difficult for them to grasp this information and start taking responsibility for their own health? Because that's something we certainly have found.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think people, I mean, that was one of the big openings for me, was that beginning to understand how you are responsible for your own health, and how, I mean, my son also turned out to be allergic to food colorings, and I started investigating this. And again, I'm talking about 1982, when these things, nowadays, again, people, it's people, and people kept on saying to me, manufacturers wouldn't put things in food that harm people. You're being paranoid. They wouldn't do this. And now, of course, I mean, people do recognise that manufacturers don't necessarily have our best interests at heart, and that we do need to do the research and understanding ourselves. We need to understand what's going on. And I mean, one of the things I meet continually is people telling me how lucky I am to be so healthy at my age. And I get very infuriated by it. And I remember in a cafe, I was in a cafe once, and the toilets were upstairs, and I was started to go up the stairs, and then this lady came who was going down the stairs, but the stairs were very narrow, so she stopped and waited for me. So I ran up the stairs. This was about, 5 years ago, I guess. And as I got to the top, she looked at me and she said, "Oh, I wish I was fit like you." And I said, and I looked at her and just said, "Just go to the gym." And she was like completely taken aback. It was like, oh, you mean, what are you saying? People believe it's luck or genes. Yeah. I mean, I work with a personal trainer, and on occasion he says to people, some of his clients, if they're moaning and sort of saying, "Oh, this is too hard," he says to them, "I have a 72-year-old client who can do this."
Yeah. Boom.
And I say,
"That's a kick in the nuts."
What do they say in answer to that? And he said, "Oh, they usually say, it must be her genes."
Oh, and nothing to do with the hard work and dedication that you put in. No, absolutely. But we find, or we have found, that people, with Johnny's, be 43 next birthday, and certainly I'm not quite 40 yet, but I'm nearly there. But we've certainly found that sort of people tend to sort of hit 40, often that sometimes before, sometimes later, but often around the 40 mark, and it's almost like, oh, well, I'll just give up now. Because everyone gets fat in middle age, especially, and everyone,
when children are involved.
Yeah,
I found there was a lot of guys who kind of had a sense of, well, that's that bit done of life then. Yeah. And just, I mean, it's certainly happened to me for the first year of having a child when it's difficult.
Well, that's
sort of
different.
Let it slide
it's just
a bit,
surviving, yes.
But then it's a definite sense of a sort of a drop of the baton, and I imagine I noticed that really obviously at late 30s, 40. I think I had a question there for later, where I sort of felt like I'd unbeknowingly wandered into a sort of a fat dad gang, where I kind of thought, whoa, why am I here? I was kind of felt like I was in the cool musician gang 5 years ago, and suddenly everyone's here. Yeah. And I imagine that must become amplified once you're sort of crossing into 70s. Whereas, do you often kind of look around and think, whoa, do you hang around with younger people, or
do you find it hard to be around people who are similar age group but seem so old?
Yes, I occasionally meet people who go to me, "Oh, it's all right for you," and I go, "What do you mean?" And they go, "Well, I'm 70 or 71 or 69, about something," and I go, "Oh, well, actually I'm 72." There is this idea, sadly, that as people get older, that that they just, life gets worse.
Mustn't grumble.
Yes, mustn't grumble. Yes.
Yeah, I don't like that one.
Yeah, I mean, a lot. I find a lot of older people, what they want to, when I speak to them, what they want to do is talk about their grandchildren and their ailments. And I'm happy to talk about my grandchild and my soon-to-be other grandchild, and my ailments, not that I have many, for about 5-10 minutes. But after that, it's like, let's talk about something real, something else, something outside of ourselves, something important.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's,
and also on the lines of, when we're talking about positivity and being inspirational, if you start spending more than 5 minutes talking about, and we can all do it, like it's really easy to walk into sort of problems or things that hurt, like every day bits hurt, right? But if you spend your time thinking and talking about them, you sort of become your problems and your ailments, and everything's amplified. Whereas often you can make a choice like you have, and do you know what? I'm going to go to the gym, and often I find after a run, a bit of back issues gone, or the problems tend to float away, and you just feel really a great sense of achievement because you've done something positive about it.
Absolutely. And the great thing about the gym is there are lots of, for me, I mean, I'm one of the oldest people in my gym. It's a very good, really nice, inclusive gym. But, I talk to people who are, half my age, three, there's a guy like 18, 19 who I regularly talk to, and he goes, how's your training going, Jane? And I go, da, 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 da. How's yours going? And he tells me about his training because he wants to do, he wants to compete. So we chat. And yet so many people only interact on a personal level with people around their old age and their own age. And I just think that's a really bad thing to do. I mean, I've got friends my own age, but I also have got friends that are much younger than me as well.
Yeah, well, it keeps life varied as well, because often people who are in your age group, yes, you can have things in common because you all grew up in the same era and things like that, but there's certain things that age group aren't going to know and aren't going to do, whereas a younger or an older age group are. So you're constantly learning and changing and finding new things, to do, certainly.
It also bridges that, like you were saying, that sort of generational guesswork where it would be all kids of today. And we found that when we were climbing, whereas I wouldn't normally associate with sort of 16, 17, 18-year-olds. They're not really going to be in my circle. But there was, I remember seeing a young chap there, and we were just watching him climbing.
He was amazing.
Like, geez. And then he said how young he was. We were like, oh, that's okay, because we didn't feel so bad. But I kind of said at the time, I'm 41, and just chatting about things and what I've gone through. And you kind of, it's nice as a society, because we're having to be really quite encouraged almost to be very much separated at the moment. It's nice we need to be speaking to everyone. I'm sure he gets an awful lot out of talking to you as well, because there's a lot of wisdom there to learn, Yeah.
And one of the interesting things I've found since I've been on Instagram is that people in their 40s have messaged me and said, I really love your feed because I had been quite frightened of getting old. But your feed has given me confidence that it doesn't have to be like that. When I look at my mum or my, she's like quite old and set in her ways and things. But what you're showing is another way of being, old and energetic and stuff. And I was really surprised at that, because I actually don't remember being worried in my 40s or 50s about getting old. But obviously there are a lot of people out there who are. And because I was like, when I set up my Instagram account, I was like, okay, I'm going to be appealing to people in their 60s and 70s. But in fact, a lot of my interaction has been with people like you, people much younger, and, people in their 40s or 50s who are going, oh, you've made me realise I ought to be going to the gym. I'm going to go and join the gym. And that's wonderful when I see that. Running or something. Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing though, isn't it? Yeah, that is great, because I would imagine, yes, on Instagram there is obviously a lot of young people. I mean, it's only been relatively recently, about a year or so, that we've even sort of understood it. We were like, well, I don't really understand that.
It's a lot to learn these days, isn't there?
And got involved with it, but the fact that it's attracting people in their 40s and over now, and that they can find people like yourselves, because we found when we started really focusing on training and just becoming sort of the best versions of ourselves that we can be physically, that it can be quite intimidating you log on and you see these amazing sort of hugely muscular men and women and you think, wow, and you look up to them and you think, wow, but it's like, well, where are the ordinary people? So that's one of the reasons why we put on a lot of stuff, when particularly Johnny puts on stuff about his training, because he's the ordinary person, you know, he's the person who was ill and fat and has changed himself around. So for people to go on and find you, someone who is older, who's accessible, who's normal, you know, who's not some crazy bodybuilder, but is also very, very fit.
I should add, there are some not crazy bodybuilders as well.
Oh yeah, of course there are. There's some wonderful people on there.
Yeah, but there are people who, I mean, in order to get some of the bodies that you see on Instagram, people have to totally devote their whole life to that. Whereas I think you guys and me, you know, we have what I would consider to be a more rounded life, so that it's important to be fit, but it's also important to occasionally eat vegan chocolate or slob out and watch a box set or something.
100%.
Yeah.
Eat some cake, yes.
Eat some cake, exactly. Yeah, definitely. But that leads us perfectly. I mean, we vegan, you're vegan, and we know that, in case people didn't know that. But you were vegetarian for a long, long time, decades, in fact. So what made you take the next step onto becoming vegan?
Well, I was vegetarian for around 40 years, and I always used to think, oh, this is enough. I'm doing enough. You know, I'm doing more than most people. Most people are vegetarian. So I'm, I'm doing my bit. Yeah, yes, it would be better if I was vegan, but really I am doing my bit as a vegetarian. So that's how I sort of justified it and carefully averted my eyes about what happens to newborn calves and what happens to male chicks and stuff like that. And then I went to the Veg Fest in Bristol 5 years ago. And I thought it was actually a vegetarian and vegan festival. I'm not sure I would have gone if I'd known it was only a vegan festival. Anyway, I went along and realised pretty quickly that all the stands were talking about vegan stuff. And I went round and came across the Veganuary stand. Now, at that time, Veganuary, which is the campaign to get people to try going vegan for a month in January, Matthew and Jane were Veganuary. It was this couple who were Veganuary themselves, and they were trying to raise, I think it was something like £8,000 for a video that they wanted to release in December and through January to encourage people to go vegan. And they'd got about £7,500 at that time, and they were just trying to raise the rest. And I chatted to them, and I was really impressed by them as people. I felt they had a lot of integrity and belief in what they were doing, and they were really putting themselves and their lives, you know, on the line to get this money, to get more people to become vegan. So I give quite a bit of money to charity. So I said to them, I will, you know, go on trying to fundraise for this £8,500. But if you don't get it all, I will make it up to the amount. So they were absolutely thrilled, and they were just, you know, like completely taken aback, because obviously it was a really stressful thing they were doing. They were overwhelmed. They were just so thankful, so grateful to me. I gave them my business card. I said, you know, if you don't get the money, just contact me, and I will get you up to that £8,500 from the £7,000, whatever it was. And I walked away, and as I walked away, I went to myself, what have you done? You are vegetarian, and yet you've just offered to give money, possibly £1,000, to help to encourage people to go vegan, and you're not vegan yourself. And my brain was like going with the inconsistency of it. And I thought, well, I don't want to go vegan, so I'm going to go back and tell them. I'm going to tell them I've changed my mind. So I turned around to walk back, and then I remembered their faces when I'd said, I will make it up to, the 8.5. And I thought, I can't do this to them. So I thought, okay, I've got to become vegan. So I went home and said to my partner, John, I said, I'm going to become vegan. And he just said, oh. And I said, so you can eat all the cheese and eggs and stuff. He said, oh. And then the next day we were with some friends, and I heard him say to them, well, of course, we're a vegan household now. And I said, what? And he said, yeah. He said, I'm going to finish off the eggs and cheese, and stuff we've got. But then, we'll be vegan in the house. But in fact, he found he benefited so much from becoming vegan rather than vegetarian that he's now vegan all the time when we're out or whether we're in. Yes, I know. Yeah, it was great. Yeah. I'm somewhat cross with myself for taking so long to become vegan. From making that step from vegetarian to vegan, thinking that my enjoyment of, I don't know, scrambled egg or blue cheese was actually more important than what was happening to animals as part of this. So
yeah. I think because for us, I mean, we weren't vegetarian. We went from being meat eaters to vegan, and this was coming up to 5 years ago. But I think that was the thing that I not struggled with, but I was surprised about the most, was because you always hear about meat is murder, and that animals get slaughtered and the awful things that happen to them. But I never, and I think this is for the majority of people and why people probably struggle and why there are so many vegetarians and not so many vegans, is that it's not out there. What happens to the dairy cows and the calves and the eggs and the chicks and the chickens who lay the eggs, and it's not so widely known. So I think people are forgiven for not taking that step to become vegan sooner, especially in years past. I think now there's less excuse because it's getting more and more out there that you can find out even if you take it on yourself to find out, like we did, what goes on. So there's less excuse now. But I think in times past, I think it must have been almost impossible to find that information. So I commend you for even being vegetarian for that long, because we weren't, were we?
No, not at all.
And we went down like you were saying before about justifying yourself about, I was doing my bit or what have you. We were doing a similar thing in the sense of we were spending literally all that money we had on the most expensive organic meat we could find, and trying to justify raw milk. We would drive for an hour to a farm in Suffolk to get raw milk because they allowed the calves to stay with the mothers for a far longer period. They still ultimately got shot for beef, but they were a lot, sort of 9 months or something with their mother. So it was, and the dairy herd were never ever taken for slaughter. They were always kept on the farm when they were no longer productive. So we thought, okay, well that'll do. That's better than nothing. And eventually we realised, well, this was it's all better than nothing, but it's not helping the animals. So that's when we decided, and Johnny said to me, I don't want to be vegan. And I was like, well, what do vegans eat? I just had no clue.
That was the beginning of starting to challenge everything that you've grown up with. It's been instilled from birth almost, it's everything which you believe is part of you. And, it's been explored on things I've seen, especially with men, men and meat and being a man and all that marketing and stuff. There's a lot to undo. Yeah. But as I said earlier, once you've lifted that lid and you start unraveling it all, it was actually quite a relief for me.
Oh yeah, I think once I became vegan, I had a great sense of freedom. I've got a 14-year-old grandson, and I've been trying to get him to go vegan. I told him that there's research that shows the more intelligent you are, the more likely you are to become vegan. There is such research, but I couldn't find it when I was looking. And he was like, yeah, Granny, yeah. But now he's 14, and he said to me recently, the meat industry it's one of the main supporters of capitalism. So I thought, oh, right, okay, he's beginning to think and question, which is great. I think one of the interesting things about veganism is people can come to it from lots of different directions. For me, it's fundamentally about cruelty to animals. Some people, it's the health issue. It can be, anti-capitalist and the environment, and they all fit that we should be preferably vegan, but at least much more plant-based.
We hope you're enjoying this video. We'd love it if at the end you could head over and check out our crowdfunder.
We're raising money to buy land and buildings to create a unique sanctuary for all, and you can find out more about this over on our crowdfunder page.
You'll find the details in the description below, and please don't forget to check out our social media. You'll find us both on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you.
People of my age think I'm very weird being vegan on the whole. And sadly, one of the things when I talk to teenagers who are vegans, and they often go, "God, you're vegan." I go, "Yeah," and they go, "Oh, I wish my mum was vegan." And they talk about or my dad or my mum and dad, and they talk about the arguments they get into with their families about it. So yeah, I was traveling quite a bit at one point and found some amazing vegan. I went to St. Petersburg, and because of Happy Cow, I found this amazing vegan place. And it was down a side road, round a corner, down a little alleyway, then through a courtyard and up some stairs to find it. So thank God for Happy Cow, because I would have never found it otherwise. And it was full of young people, and they got talking to me, and I've been elsewhere, and people think if you're vegan, it's very restrictive, but it's opened. Particularly when traveling, I've got to meet some really interesting people, because you can't eat in the tourist restaurants because they don't cater. Well, it's changing, I guess, but they don't necessarily cater for vegans. And if you find the local vegan places, then they're full of hip young people who are amazed that you're there and have found it and want to talk to you. So
yeah. Absolutely, yeah, and highly intelligent as well, according to the study.
I'm going to use that one now. I think. But it's nice. It opens up a community, doesn't it? Certainly gets me talking a lot more than I used to. And I found with food, and I think you've agreed with this as well, I've never been so involved with food before.
No.
Before it was more of a
open a box and put something in the oven. Now it's wow, look at all these wonderful ingredients I can cook with, and I've found it the complete opposite of restrictive. I've found it absolutely just an abundance of things to colourful, amazing foods that I mainly knew about but possibly hadn't tried before, and things like that. And I think once people try it, and then if they're genuine and if they really have opened their mind to it and are not just doing it to make someone else happy or whatever, the way it makes you feel, even just from a diet point of view, just having a plant-based diet, just makes you feel fantastic. I can't understand why anyone, if they haven't tried a plant-based diet for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, wouldn't stick at it, because we've certainly just felt phenomenal in comparison to how we used to feel. I just think it's fantastic. Did you certainly feel a change when you came? I know you were already vegetarian, but dairy is evil for your system, so coming off dairy must have been a really great thing.
And I wasn't eating huge amounts of dairy. I ate quite a lot of eggs. Eggs were I guess my weakness in terms of things like that. But I definitely noticed a difference. I think I'm more resilient. I have more energy. I recover quicker in the gym. And that was interesting. When I started in the gym 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago, in the gym I go to now, and I started working with this personal trainer, and I said to him, I'm vegetarian. And he was like, oh, that will make things a little bit difficult, sort of thing. And but over the 6 years, his view has changed dramatically now. And I think he really recognises that, the fact that I'm plant-based has a very positive effect on my training. So yeah.
So you're changing the viewpoint of the personal trainer. That's quite potent.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I talk to all the personal trainers about my vegan diet. There's quite a lot of personal trainers in that gym, and we talk to them. And I often say, well, of course, they'll say something like, "Oh, you're doing really well," and I go, "Well, of course, I'm vegan." And just leave it at that. I don't.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes if you just sort of drip feed things to people. Because if you sort of try to hammer it home, which I do sometimes, in general, I don't think it's successful. I think it's better to just, with people just gradually say things. Yeah.
Lead by example.
Totally lead by example, exactly. They cannot argue with you being fit and healthy. There's no argument there, is there?
I kind of get that with people I've known for a long time. They're kind of like, well, what's he doing? How come he looks quite different from what he was a few years ago, And that's it. So I think often it's better than, like you say, often you feel like you just feel like you need to hit quite hard.
Well, there's a time and a place for that, isn't there? There's a time and a place for shouting about it.
You can't ram it down people's throats all the time because no one's going to want to talk to you.
Yeah, I was having coffee with a friend the other day, and she's vegetarian and says she would like to be vegan. We were having coffee, and I ordered my coffee with oat milk, and she said whatever she wanted, flat white with cow's milk, please. And as she ordered that, I said, would you like me to tell you about what happens to baby dairy cows? And she said, change that to oat milk, please. And I wasn't aggressive. I didn't do it. I did it very quietly and actually as a genuine question to her. And then she said, it's just habits sometimes, isn't it? You just have cow's milk out of habit. So I'm hoping, that realization in future, she'll think, well, I actually don't mind having oat milk. It's just as good as, in taste and all the rest of it. So maybe, why get involved in all that cow thing? Why not just...
Exactly. I mean, anything that just makes them just unlock that tiny little bit in their way of thinking, because everyone's got a conscience, so it just makes them think, maybe.
I've had things before when it's been like, I feel sorry for the farmers and things like that, which have been comebacks for me, and I kind of think, well, it's like you said, it's a habit and it's an indoctrinated way of thinking because farmers can just farm different stuff.
Yeah, so everything's got to change. Yeah,
it's just changing that habitual way of thinking. And a lot of the time we're just on autopilot. We've been growing up to, just think of the marketing that milk had through the decades.
Oh goodness, or giving it at school, and
then you've got programs like BBC Countryfile, which just drives me mad. It's this idyllic farming. If people really think there's nothing wrong with abattoirs and with high intensive industrial farming, then Countryfile should be showing that, because it's part of and the fact that they don't is like there's this huge shame and disconnect around it, I think, because they know if people really saw this, a lot of people would actually change what they're doing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's like smoking, isn't it? It's been exactly. I think it will, and it is unravelling like smoking. The sad thing with regards to smoking was if you smoked mostly, you're hurting yourself. Whereas with veganism, it's the impact so wide. Yeah,
hurting the animals, the environment, everything. Yeah, it's. But people are waking up, and we just have to be positive. And like we've said before, is just lead by example. I mean, going on from having the plant-based diet. Even previously before that, I was having a look at your website, and you've done some really quite tremendous physical challenges. Lots of cycling challenges and the London Marathon, and sort of how did they come about, and which one of those was your favourite, do you think?
That last one's a difficult question. I actually was very unfit as a child. I mean, people tend to assume that because I'm really fit now, I've been like that all my life, and that's really, really, really untrue. As a child, I couldn't touch my toes. I was the only child in the class who couldn't stand on one leg. I mean, I could, but for like 2 seconds. Everybody else was, this is easy. I just couldn't do it. I was brought up to believe that the sweating that you do when you exercise could make you ill. So as soon as you started to sweat, you stopped. You know, I remember as a child sort of running around the garden on a warm day and my mum going, "Oh, look at you sweating, stop, stop." And so I wasn't, so I grew up not into exercise. Nobody in the family exercised. I tried to learn to ride a bike as a child, but my father was, he was full of the physical world being a very dangerous place. And so he was telling me, you mustn't use the front brake, because if you use the front brake, you'll go over the top and hit your head and die. So what I got from that is you don't touch the brakes. And we lived on a very slight hill. So the only way I could stop was by going into the curb, by steering the bike into the curb and then falling off that way. So after about 2 or 3 weeks of trying to learn to ride a bike, I gave that up. And then when I was 46, I met my partner, John, and he was a very keen triathlete. And he took me out on his tandem. And when we got back, he said, "You're fantastic on a tandem." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, you sit so still." And he said, "Most people sort of fidget and are trying to look around you and things." And I said, "Well, it was because I was terrified." And I said I was just rigid, totally rigid with fear. And the next day I woke up and all the muscles in my neck and shoulders, just because I'd been so terrified. And then he put me on a stationary bike, and I pedaled for about sort of 5 minutes, on a turbo bike, bike trainer. And then I stopped, and he said to me, "Why have you stopped?" And I said, "Well, I'm sweating." And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, that's a bad thing, isn't it?" And he said, "No." He said, "That's what happens when you bike." So he took quite a long time to convince me that I should actually. And, I'm a logical, rational, intelligent person, I believe. But even so, this thing that, this is the power of what we're told as small children. Anyway, so I ended up, he taught me to ride a bike. And after that, the thing I found I really enjoyed was the more long distance cycling. So in 2004, I cycled across America from the East Coast, from the West Coast to the East Coast, which was 4,200 miles. And I've done St. Petersburg to Istanbul. And that was 2,300 miles, I think, 10 countries. That was a nightmare. It was like, what currency are we in now? There's all these different currencies. So, I really enjoy doing that, because apart from anything else, it makes life very simple when you're doing that, because the task for the day is to go from A to B. That's all you have to concentrate on, so life becomes actually very simple. Yeah, I saw some really interesting statistics from the NHS recently, and it was like, and this is NHS, so it's, they don't say this stuff without a lot of evidence to back it up. And it said, if you take regular physical exercise, research has proved that if you take regular physical exercise, you have a 30% less chance of dying early. You have a 30-something, they were all around 30%, a 30% less chance of osteoarthritis, surprisingly, dementia, mental health problems, fractures, falling, heart problems, stroke problems, type 2 diabetes. They were all around 30% or more reduction in your chances of having those. So it is absolutely essential that people exercise. I wrote an article on my blog about how to exercise even if you don't enjoy it. Because I think ideally, we want people to enjoy exercise, as Johnny said. I mean, that's the ideal, but there are people who are perhaps never going to enjoy it. And so, one of the things I was saying on my blog post was, one of the things you can do is say, okay, I'm going to exercise for 30 minutes once, 2 or 3 times a week or whatever. And then just work that out as a percentage of your total life, and it's not actually a lot, 30 minutes of today is not such a lot, and the benefit is so huge, and that we need to just make it part of our life.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And I think if you can obviously add a plant-based diet into that, then the statistics, everything's going to get up even higher, those levels are going to start going up. And also, if you can do whatever movement you do, if you can couple that with being in nature and being outside, even better, even if it's, say, walk, if you enjoy the gym, a walk to the gym, or, if there's on a Sunday afternoon, you don't go to the gym, but you go for a nice walk in the woods or whatever it is, or cycle in the countryside. Because I don't think people realise that you get the same, when you're surrounded by nature. Even, it's why we filled this room, you can't really see, but we've got plants everywhere, because you get the same triggers in your brain, same benefits from if you surround yourself with plants as to whether you do if you go out and walk around in some trees outside. I mean, obviously you don't get the other benefits of being in the fresh air, and you don't get the sunlight, what have you, vitamin D, but it's quite amazing. You surround yourself with plants, it has the same effect on your brain.
That's why all these plants have arrived. I didn't know when we had so many plants.
And they look pretty too.
And look at the sky. Look at the sky. There's some research done in a hospital where there was windows on one side of the hospital, of the ward, and the people who were in beds that could see the sky through the window, not even going outside, obviously, because they're in a hospital, they recovered faster than the people on the other side of the ward who were looking at a wall.
That's incredible. That's incredible, even through glass.
Even through glass, just seeing the sky can make a significant difference. So I think we all need to consciously do that more often. And as I say, you don't need to go out to do that. You just look out the window and look up at the sky.
And I think what Johnny was saying about people trying to deny their physiology, and we are all animals, and we need the basic needs that all animals need. We need the sunlight, we need the air, we need these things. But I think some people often think, we're so super intelligent and we're so way past that, I'm going to deny that and I'm just going to do this and whatever. But you cannot deny your innate needs. That's what every animal needs.
I feel like I gave that a good go, and I know where I got to by 35, and it didn't end very well.
By denying your physiology.
I was pretty good at it. I was in my misspent youth. I smoked like 40 to 50 cigarettes a day, drank half a bottle of whiskey a day, lived on toast and marmalade and jam and chocolate. So.
It sounds quite familiar, if I'm honest. But that's the joy of life that you do get, and if you're very fortunate, you get many chances to rebirth and try different things out, and it's part of living and learning, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but that's the joy of it, isn't it? Wanted to say, Jane, that one of the reasons why we're doing these interviews is because we're currently crowdfunding for a space. We want to buy buildings and land, land and buildings really, so that we can continue to rescue animals, but we also want to have a space where people can come. So sort of like what I was just saying about getting out in nature, people can come and they can sit by a tree and read a book, they can interact with the animals. So it's the sanctuary for all, really, rather than just an animal sanctuary. And one of the things we want to have once it's up and running is we want to have people like yourselves to come and speak, so that in a very informal way, we don't want to have big stark buildings. We're thinking more of like a yurt or something like that, much more sort of low key. and comfortable feeling. So what we decided to do is we do these, instead of just sitting on our hands waiting for waiting to get the money in and move this forward.
We'd speak to people now.
Speak to people now. We get, why wait,
Yeah.
So this is the reason why we wanted to do these videos. So also, when it is up and running, we'd like to invite you to come and speak.
Absolutely,
we'd love that.
That'd be fantastic.
Yes, thank you. So what's the crowdfunding platform are you
there's
using?
a page, I think it's called chuffed.org.
There's a lot now, and a lot of different ones.
There's lots of different ones, and it's live. It's up there. I think if you go in our bio on our Instagram page, you'll see the crowdfunding page. So we've been rescuing the animals for years, and we're now just out of space, and we always see cases that we could help, but we don't have the space to help. And also because we've both been on a very long healing journey, particularly Johnny. He was very, very unwell, and has turned himself around. We've got a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience now that we want to share. So we thought if we create a sanctuary for all, somewhere where everyone can come, then we can benefit both humans and the animals. So that's the plan. It will happen.
It'll be wonderful if you can come and do a talk once it's all set up, ready to go, and inspire some more people.
Yeah, and then come and chill out with some animals afterwards.
Sounds like a plan. Sounds like a really good idea.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Oh dear, talking of animals, that sounds like Buster. Oh dear, he's howling. Bless him.
That might be our cue.
That's the cue.
Yeah,
I'm hungry.
You've done enough. Go away.
Yeah. Not subtle.
But it has been an absolute joy to speak to you, Jane. Thank you ever so much.
Yeah.
And I'll go find your crowdfunding page. It sounds like a really good enterprise.
That'd be brilliant if you could share it as much as possible.
That'd be fabulous,
That would be amazing, because the more people who are aware of our cause, the quicker we can make it happen. And then, we've got a few things of our own coming up. Johnny's got an interview with someone this Friday. We've got a radio interview on Wednesday, haven't we?
Yeah, we're getting out
there. We're trying
to,
do our bit our side as well. And obviously we're doing this series of Get Inspired videos too. So
it's all good.
It's all going. All busy, but good fun.
You too.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Yes,
it's
please
fantastic.
do. Thank you. Well, we love seeing your videos, and it's a bit disappointing when you
keep going. Oh God, it's an 8K dumbbell.
Lift heavier dumbbells. I'm like, that's heavier than I've got. But it's brilliant. I love it. It's great. We will hopefully be just as fit and healthy when we're in our
I hope so. We'll do everything we possibly can together. Yeah.
Definitely. Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay. Right.
Well, you have a wonderful day, Jane.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, we hope you enjoyed today's video.
Please like, subscribe and share as much as possible.
Thank you.